If you're a Thrive Apprentice user, but you like the look of Kajabi, something similar to Amy Porterfield's Digital Course Academy, like you're seeing here, well then I've got good news for you. We can build this inside of Thrive Apprentice without any trouble. For example, here's what I built using nothing but Thrive Apprentice, and it's very similar in design. I took a few liberties and made a couple customizations for how I'd like it to look. I'm also going to show you how to use Conditional Display so that you can show promotional materials inside of your course templates when users are or are not members. What I love about this particular template is that you can also have room for post content so that in addition to just the title of your course, the comments, and the next and previous lessons, lesson resources, and the little promotional material here, you can also add post content. So if you had written materials or additional videos or content that you wanted to add within a lesson, it's entirely editable inside of Thrive Architect, all still built entirely within Thrive Apprentice. So if that sounds good to you, let's dive in and take a look at how to build this. We're going to start off by building a brand new template. We do that inside of Thrive Apprentice's design editor. You can just click on design here on the left-hand side, go to edit design, and then click on manage templates. At first glance, you can see the core templates, and you can see that I've called mine modern standard and I have modern video. These are for my course and my video templates. Once you've created one of your templates, it's pretty easy to save the elements and then take them into a new template. So for this video, I'm going to show you how to create your video template, but everything that I'm showing you, you can duplicate and create a video lesson, an audio lesson, or whatever else you'd like to create within your templates. If you want to start completely from scratch, it's pretty easy to do. You just click add new, and we're creating a new template, so we can give this a name. I'll just call mine demo, tap Kajabi look, and we'll choose the type of content. This is a lesson template, and the post format's what I was talking about earlier. We'll change this to video, and then we'll click start from scratch. Now you can see it dropped it down to the bottom of our list here, so let's go ahead and click edit. And now we just kind of have this really ugly, just thrown in default look. It's probably going to match what you might have chosen as your default template for your lessons during your setup wizard. You know, maybe we can keep some of it. We are going to keep the title and we are going to keep the breadcrumbs, but let's get rid of what we're not going to use. I'm not going to use any of this like meta information here, so we'll delete that. We'll keep our post content and our bottom section we can go ahead and turn off. So this bottom section is accessible by clicking on it, and then in the left side, clicking on the little eyeball. But okay, so let's start to manipulate this. First things first, in our top section where we have our breadcrumbs, I like to add a little bit of visual difference. So I'll click this background section and add my brand color. It's kind of like my dark slate blue. And then we'll go into the top section typography and change that to white. Already looking pretty good. Click on our breadcrumbs, reduce our font size to something like 15. That might be pretty good. And then we'll just start to clean this up a little bit, cleaning up some of this extra padding that we have, and maybe applying a minimum height that we like here, and then going to center. All right, it's already looking pretty good. Here we go. And then we can change our alignment to be centered. Okay, so our breadcrumbs are done. Those are the default breadcrumbs included with my template. If yours is different, and it very well may be, you can simply go into the element tray on the right-hand side and do a search for breadcrumbs. And you can see the breadcrumbs here, and then just drag them into the section. Pretty easy. It's pretty default stuff. You then click on them, and you can edit the breadcrumb design by clicking this pinkish salmon color button on the left. And then you can choose separator types and all of that. We won't dive into too many of those nuanced differences there. Let's jump back over to our design to kind of get a little bit of inspiration here. So we have our big video at the top. That's pretty standard. We have our little modules. We'll call them modules. They're like modular sections, right? We have our header and our content section. That'll be in one. We have our comments. We have what I've kind of deemed as the course info progress section. I'm making this up as I go, but this has some percentage completed with our next buttons here. Now this differs from one of the Kajabi templates that I've seen that puts it underneath the video. I'll let you choose. I like mine over here. This just seems to make a nice little sense here. And then click on the course title to jump back to the course as well. And then we have our resource module, and then our conditional display module here that we're using as a promotion for our courses. So let's start making our modules. Let's jump back over to our template. First thing I'm going to do is, in order to get this module effect, I have this white on gray. Hopefully that's translating over YouTube. They do some compression on the videos, and it kind of makes it hard to see colors. But we have white on this like almost off-white gray. So we'll go to our page. We'll go to our basic, and the breadcrumbs at the top. This is something I want to point out if you're not familiar with it. On the very top of the screen, we have the breadcrumbs for our editor, and we want to go to the very first step because we want to apply this to the entire page. We'll go to background style and click on the none thing here, and here we can apply our background color of gray. So we'll apply our F9, F9, F9 hex code and click apply. And as you can see, it's almost no different to your eye until you start to add white directly on it. But that's our background color. And now we're going to add into this some columns. So let's look at our breadcrumbs here for a second. Again, we're in the first one, but if we click into our page, I'm just going to click on the title here. Look at the breadcrumbs. We have our post title in a content box. That's fine. In a content wrapper, so I'm going to click on the content wrapper, and you can kind of see this green line on the sides. You can see it here and on the other side here. That kind of defines where the content goes. That's fine. And then in the one step left of content wrapper, we have our layout container, and that controls things like width of all of the layout and things like that. So let's go ahead and click on our anywhere again. So we'll click on our title, and then we'll go to our content wrapper. This is where we want to start to add elements to. So let's go into our element tray. We want to add columns. So if you can look for columns, or you can just start typing columns and then drag columns onto the page. We're going to choose 2 columns because if I jump back to our design here, you can see that despite being modules, everything on the left is in one column and everything on the right is in another column. We've just given them their own containers, their own background, their own design, so to speak. So back in here, we have our columns within our content area. Now let's start to make a couple tweaks to this. The first tweak might be to make the columns a little bit wider. You can grab between the columns and then you can start to drag, and this gives you very precise, almost by the tenths decimal place here, to be able to choose the width. Or while you're dragging like this, just hold Control and suddenly it jumps in increments of 5%. So you can do a 60-40 split or 65-35, whatever looks good for your design. With your columns selected on the left-hand side, you can also go to Reset Column Layout, and you can choose a 2/3, 1/3 layout, which will do about 66% on the left and 33% or so on the right. We'll stick with that 2/3, 1/3 split. That seems to look pretty good for our design here. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my featured video, grab this little green handle here. It's the easiest way to move it. And I'm going to drag it above my columns. So now when the page loads, they have the video at the top. We still have our columns and everything else below it. Next thing I'm going to do is look for a content box. Content boxes are going to be a foundation of this design because if you remember, if I jump back over here, each of our content boxes houses content elements and has a little bit of a shadow and a white background. So for our content box, we're going to go to background style, give it a white background, click apply, and then we're going to apply a shadow to it by clicking on shadow and clicking this middle option to drop a shadow. Now that shadow is a little bit extreme, so we can click on drop shadow and we can set it to something that matches a little bit more of our design. So I'll just choose 360 degrees, and then I'll choose 8 for our opacity, 0, 8, and 0, and click apply. And now our drop shadow is very subtle directly behind the box. And then that looks pretty good. We're not done yet. Click on our content box, and I want to go to borders and corners, and I want to set a 5 pixel corner rounding. I think that looks pretty nice as well. So there we go. We have the foundation of our content box, and you can click on this and duplicate this as much as you want. So I'm just going to make one duplicate. I like to do that to leave myself a foundation or a baseline to come back to in the future, and I can start making edits to this box. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the post title, or in this case, it's a post title because it's WordPress. WordPress deals in posts, but this is our lesson title. So I'll drag the lesson title into our box, and that's a little bit big, so I'll reduce the size down to something a little more in line with our design. Maybe 30 pixels looks good to me. And I'll get rid of this extra text element that we no longer need. The next thing I'm going to do is something that a lot of people surprisingly don't realize you can do. We have the content of our lesson. If you go into your lessons and you at the top click Edit with Thrive Architect, the content section is right here. This is essentially where we add all of our content elements. So if I were to add columns, if I were to add text, everything I'm adding is being added within the content area here. So with this content, we're going to drag this directly below our post title. And now when we're editing this lesson with Thrive Architect instead of our Thrive Apprentice Design template editor, any content we add to this lesson will go inside of this box. Again, we're editing templates and we're not editing the content of this particular lesson. We're editing the template. If you're interested in learning more about templates, I have a great course, or a module rather, all about this inside of my Thrive Apprentice to Master course. If you're interested at a theme level, I have my Thrive Theme Builder course that really breaks this down and helps you understand and grasp this concept. And of course, here on YouTube, I have several videos on this topic as well. Okay, we have our content in, and that's looking pretty good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add a comment section. So I'm going to open up my element tray and search for comments. Before I bring in those, I want to just duplicate this again, just for ease of use, always giving myself an extra container. So let's go back in here, search for comments, drag the Thrive comments in to our container. And I do want to get rid of this extra content, which I should have before. And there we go. Now we have our comment section. Interestingly enough, this is actually using the exact same lesson I showed in the preview. So it's pulled in automatically, dynamically, whatever word applies, the right comments, and things are already looking good as well. I'm going to duplicate this box again, and this time I'm going to drag it and then move my mouse to the top of the screen so that it scrolls while I'm dragging, and I'm going to then drop my box into my right-hand column. Kind of looks like a sidebar right now, but it's not. It's just the second column still. And now we're going to build our, what I called kind of like our course navigation box thing. We're going to our element tray. We're going to expand that. We're going to search for progress. Don't do course progress, because course progress is actually going to be like what you've set as a label, like in progress or not. What we're going to do is choose a progress bar. Drag the progress bar below our text. And we're just going to choose something simple. I chose progress bar 1. I think it looks really nice. I actually really like the color too. But we're going to go to layout and position, get rid of this extra 20 pixels. I think that's a little much. And then for this, I think I'm just going to make a couple little tweaks to this. I'm going to go to course progress, click on that and click insert. And you can see that it changed it to 27%. So again, with that highlighted, whatever you put there, go to the dynamic text, go to Thrive Apprentice, and then find course progress. You don't want the course progress status, because that would just simply say in progress. So with that, where it says 27% current progress, let's change current progress to say 20% of the course completed. Something like that. And you can make any edits you want. We might actually just change that to say completed. Something super simple. Maybe we'll make the size of this 12, and that looks pretty good. We can shrink the little distance there by going to our progress and then just giving this a negative margin. There might be a better way to do it, but that's how I'm going to do it here. Okay, there we go. You get the idea. This will automatically and dynamically adjust the course progress based on how they're doing. We're going to add just a basic button, and our button is just going to say next. And in the breadcrumbs, I'm going to choose button. I'm going to click this little S on the left to make it small. It doesn't need to be much bigger than that. I might go to button width and go away from pixels or percentage and go to pixels, and I might just change it to be like a 100 pixel width button. In my design, that looks pretty good to me. Now, we need to make some changes though. Still with the button selected, on the left-hand side, button link, it's looking for a link. We're going to give it a dynamic link. We're going to choose Thrive Apprentice and mark lesson complete. Next lesson is the first thing that comes up, but if I drop down, you can see I have previous lesson, next lesson, course overview page, school homepage. I like mark lesson complete next lesson. I think that makes sense in our context here. I'm going to check the box that when they click that button, it just doesn't mark it complete. It also goes automatically to the next lesson. I like that a lot right there. So I'm going to click insert. We're good to go. Now for ease of building this, I'm just going to duplicate the button, and I'm going to go into my element tray. I'm going to add another little column section, but I'm going to do that right below the progress bar. So now we have two columns. I'm going to drag in our next and our other next. I'm going to change this one to say previous, or even better, I'm going to make it say back, because next and back, they're actually the same number of letters. So relatively the same size button. And then I'm going to click on my button, or go in the breadcrumbs to button, and I'm going to change this to previous lesson. And then I'm going to click update. And now this button will go to the previous lesson, this button will go to the next lesson and mark this lesson as complete. Now, you might prefer these buttons being a little bit bigger. I think I actually might, given the look of this design. So I'll click on my button and I'll click full. And then I'll click on my other button and click full. I'm doing that here on the left-hand side under my size and alignment. Now, what's nice about this is because these buttons themselves are within a column within columns, the columns have a 15 pixel gutter, or the distance between the two buttons. That's super helpful, and it makes this actually look really nice. One more thing I want to do to these though, I want to add an icon to these buttons. So I'm going to click on one of my buttons. I probably should have done this before, would have made duplicating it faster. But I click on a button on the left-hand side, click add icon. For this one, it makes sense to be on the left. And now I can click on that icon back on my button. On the left-hand side, click change icon. And I'm just going to look for, actually I don't need to do any searching at all because look at that. There's a little angle left. Let's click on that and click select. Looking good. I'll click on my other button, click add icon. We are going to click icon side right though. Click on my icon, change icon on the left, and we're looking for caret right or angle right. Oh, did you look at that? That actually looks pretty good. Now, you will see that these buttons have quite a bit of distance between our progress bar that we added. So what I want to do is click on the button itself. And again, if you do these things before you duplicate them, you don't have to do it twice. But I'm going to get rid of all this extra margin, and I'll leave the padding because that's inside the button. Click on my other button, get rid of my extra margin. And then in the breadcrumbs, let's work our way to the left. Column, there's nothing here. Columns, there we go. There's a little bit of margin. Get rid of that. And we're also going to get rid of the padding on our columns as well. And then if I go back to my progress bar and I click on that, you can see I have 20 pixels of margin that I just don't need. So I'm going to get rid of it. And there we go. If I get rid of this extra element, that looks pretty good. Maybe one thing I will do is I will go back into my content box and I will add another maybe 20 pixels. Oops, so that should be 40. There we go. That actually looks nice because there is extra space between the top because my text itself has built-in text spacing. So visually, I think that looks pretty good. We've successfully created our course navigation box thingy. Okay, now we need to add the resources section, but the resources section is a little bit different. It doesn't go into its own content box because a content box would appear whether or not the lesson has resources, and not every single lesson has resources. So we're going to make a resource section look like the background boxes or these content module boxes, but not actually be one. So open up your element tray and do a search for lesson resources and drag it right below the content box that we built previously. And now you'll see that everything in here loads in. Now here's how you turn that off. With our lesson resources selected, check your breadcrumbs. We want to turn off our description, and where it says download button, we're going to get rid of that as well because we're just going to have an open button, and we can change the text on this based on what's inside of our Thrive Apprentice settings. In fact, if I click on the button and I go to main options, or rather if I click on the text and I go to the dynamic content above, you can see that button text is set in labels and translations. We can change these buttons as well. If we want to change it from the resource open label, we can change this to the resource download label and click update. And then you can see what happens there. The button changes dynamically based on what was selected. So we'll leave ours as the resource open label. It's totally fine, but we'll make a few tweaks to the design of this. So for our text here, we'll reduce this down to 16 or to even 15, something a little bit smaller. But otherwise, that looks pretty good. We can change the design of our buttons by going to background style and then just adding our background however we want them to look. And then under typography, changing it to something that's legible. And then again, you can fully design the way that these look. I'll just kind of make them briefly how mine look with a 5-pixel border or corner round and no border. And now they're starting to take shape and look a little bit more like my resource. But we have a couple more changes we need to do. With our lesson resources section selected, we do want to go to background style and apply a white background so that it starts to look like our other content boxes. We do want to apply our same drop shadow, again on the left-hand side, change this to 360 degrees, 8080, and click apply. Looking good. Borders and corners, get rid of that 1-pixel border that they added and add our 5-pixel rounded border. So that looks pretty good. Now, with our lesson resources selected, layout and position, get rid of that extra 40 pixels of margin at the top. And we can go ahead inside of here, make all of these be 30, and then select our lesson resources, go to main options, and delete however much of this line spacing that we no longer want. And there you go. That's how you very quickly build a simple lesson resources module or little container inside of our design. Okay, we're just about done. We need to do a little bit of cleaning up, but before we jump to that, I want to add one more section, and that was the conditional display promo box. So if we jump back to my example, and we can see here that I have a little box below my lesson resources that says Convology Pro Community, access the community. Well, this box is only going to appear for Pro members. And if I go to the top right here and I click this orange eyeball over some boxes, that's our conditional display preview conditions option. And if I uncheck Pro member, you can see it transforms automatically into a promotion for somebody who's taking this lesson in this course to become a Pro member. Now, this is great because it's dynamic. It's in all of my templates for my lessons, and I want that to be there. I want my Pro members to be able to access the community and ask questions, but I want my non-Pro members to be able to see what comes with Convology Pro and click on it. So let's build something very similar inside of our demo that we're putting together. I have my content box that I duplicated. I'm going to leave everything the way it is because it's just so already made for us. I'm just simply going to start building the default version. For us, that might have an image. So I'll drop in just an image element. And I've selected the image for that. I'll reduce the size of it because it's just a bit too big. We'll make that about 100 pixels. Layout and position, center. I don't need the extra margin on the top because if I click on my content box, we already have built-in padding. And what I'm going to do is change this text here to reflect what I had on my other one. And that just said Convology Pro Community, and I'll center it. And this actually has quite a bit of line spacing, so I'll get rid of that. And there we go. Get rid of the extra spacing there. And now I need a button. Pretty simple. Just open up my element tray, go to button, and type in access the community. And I think this button's just a little bit big. So with the button selected, I'll re-click on this S. Even though it looks selected, watch what happens to the button here on the right. If I click the S, bloop, there it goes. Shrinks down a little bit and looks so much better. I'll get rid of this extra spacing here. There's probably only need about 10. Reduce that down to 0. That looks pretty good. I'm going to actually make the inside of this one 30. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's add our link to here. Again, you just click on the button and add your link, and you're good to go. Okay, so we've built our version that a Pro member will see. And right now, without making any tweaks to it, this is the default display. But we don't want this to be the default display. We want this to be the display that a member sees if they're logged in and they are a member. So if a user is a member, we want them to see this. So this can't be our default display. This has to be our if they have access to the membership display. So what I'm going to do is click on it here in the left-hand side under Conditional Display, click the duplicate icon. Now I have default display and I have a duplicate of it that I'm going to rename to say member display. Click apply. And for this version, I'm going to add a condition. Click that last little icon on the right, and I'm going to say display this content if or when the user has access to products. And here it's going to search my products, and I'm going to choose Convology Pro and click Save Condition. Okay, so now we have our member display, which shows that they can access the community. And we have our default display that also shows that. So we need to make a change here. We need our default display to be what non-members see. So with our default display selected, our non-member version, we're going to make some changes. The first one will be, I'm going to click on a background section and I'm going to change the background to be something that stands out, that gets people's attention. I'm going to get rid of this image and add in a new one. I'm going to change my button to say become a member. And we're going to add in a styled list of all the great reasons you would want to join, and I'm going to change the typography to white. So there is our promo box. And again, if I click into the content box, you can see I have my default display selected here in orange right above it. And if I do a drop down, I have my members display promoting them to go over to the community. All right, so that part is set. Okay, we have each of our elements. We have our promo section, our resource section, our course navigation box, our title, and our content area if we want to add text content into our lesson, and our lesson comments. Now, I just want to do a little bit of cleaning up. We have a little bit of spacing issues going on, and then we're going to wrap this up. So to clean this up, click on the first thing we're going to do is click on a video, go to layout and position. I'm going to start getting rid of some of this extra spacing that we don't need. I think the top 20 pixels between the top section and the video, that looks great to me. If I'm going to click on our content box here, our original content box that houses our title and our content, just going to get rid of that extra 20 at the top, brings it up a little closer, and I need to do the same thing to our content box on the right with our course navigation thingy, and delete the 20 pixels there. That brings everything up just a little bit more. I want to make a couple more tweaks. Maybe we think our title's too close to the edge of our box, so we can click into our content boxes and we can change those to 30 pixels on top, bottom, and sides. We can do the same thing over here in our navigation content box. Layout, let's make that 30 pixels. And let's change some font sizing here. I think the font size is just a little too big on our course title. We'll drop that down to 20. And then I think our text and our buttons is still a little too big. We'll change that to maybe 16. Makes it a little bit cleaner. And then we already did 30 pixels on our resource box, and this one down here looks good to me. And then we'll delete the 20 pixels on our comment container. And there we go. Now the last tweak I might do, if the gutter between our two columns is too small, you can click into the columns in the breadcrumbs and then go to main options and increase the gutter width until you feel comfortable with where it's at. Maybe something along the lines of about 30 pixels or so. That might look pretty good. And then you're all set. Your template has been created and your Thrive Apprentice courses have transformed from looking like something with a sidebar and a course list and maybe just a single content, one column section down below into something that resembles a little bit closer to Kajabi, a little bit closer to something like Amy Porterfield might use. I hope that tutorial and that step-by-step process that we went through was helpful for you. I hope that whether or not you were going into this hoping to make it look like Kajabi or not, that you still learned something about how the Thrive Apprentice template designer works and how you can essentially make your course lessons, your modules, and all of those things that make up a Thrive Apprentice design, you can make them look like whatever you want. I hope that you use this as inspiration moving forward to create a course design that is unique to you. If you're interested in learning more about Thrive Apprentice, I do have an entire Thrive Apprentice course called Thrive Apprentice to Master. And of course, Convology Pro is my membership where I give access to all of my courses and additional benefits like a members-only community, as well as an asset library full of templates just like this one. In fact, I'm making the template from this lesson available to Convology Pro members to download and with just a couple of clicks, import it and make it their own. If you'd like to see other tutorials like this, I would really appreciate it if you'd leave a comment and let me know. I want to create tutorials to help you learn how to build the things that are of interest to you. So if you have ideas for different designs and how to build them, let me know and I'll add them to my video queue. But that'll do it for me in this video. I'm Doug from Convology, and I'll see you in the next video.